When it comes to what studios everyone thought Microsoft was going to acquire, I think we can all agree Activision Blizzard was not one of them. And I think something else everyone should be able to agree on is that this is a good thing. Even with Microsoft owning Activision, they are nowhere near being a monopoly like so many people are weirdly trying to claim. And well, with all the changes to the corporate ladder as well as culture over in the sexual harassment homeland coming thanks to Xbox, I don't see why people would be upset about this, when the vast majority of people who are complaining were also heavily supporting Sony buying up studios like Insomniac and Housemarque, who previously worked on Xbox titles. People keep making this really strange argument that it's bad because Microsoft is buying up publishers and Sony is just buying developers, when in reality if Sony had the money they would be buying publishers, but they don't. So instead last year they bought 6 studios, which is essentially equivalent to buying a publisher. Finally, thanks to Microsoft, developers like Toys and Bob's won't be forced to develop Call of Duty. Instead, they'll be working on other franchises that they actually want to work on. Not only that, but we may finally see Activision do something we've all wanted them to do forever. Stop releasing Call of Duty every goddamn year and forcing those games into development hell. The literal only reason Microsoft bought Activision was because Activision was looking to sell itself. And well, we all know there are very few companies in the industry actually able to buy them. So they turned to the pretty much only company able to buy them, aka Microsoft. Personally, I much prefer this to the alternative of Facebook owning them, considering all they've done to Oculus. But of course, PlayStation fanboys are crying over this acquisition, because as we all know, Call of Duty is the biggest franchise on PlayStation. If Xbox, once all the contracts with Sony end, decide to not extend those contracts, which looks like a real possibility based on what Phil Spencer said on Twitter earlier, then Sony would be looking at $260 million in losses, single-handedly from Xbox making COD exclusive to PC, mobile and Xbox consoles, which is the reason as to why you can read the fear in Sony's press releases regarding the news. Now, before anyone tries the bullshit of crying about how terrible this is for gaming and how this makes no sense, because COD is quote-unquote too big of a franchise to remove off of PlayStation. Remember how PlayStation removed Spider-Man from everything but PlayStation? An undeniably more lucrative character than the entirety of COD. Sony started this shit and people have been begging for years to get Microsoft to quote-unquote compete, but now that they are, they're losing their minds over it. I mean, goddamn, I've got enough salt to make multiple videos on this bullshit. PlayStation's entire strategy last generation was to try and choke Xbox to death via timed exclusivity of third-party titles, and now that Xbox is playing the same game but better, both console fanboys and Sony themselves are crying about it, which I personally find absolutely hilarious. People seriously need to realize that this is not a bad thing for the vast majority of the industry. The only platform potentially missing out is PlayStation. They are not the majority of the industry, and the majority of the industry will still have access to these Xbox studio titles. So without further delay, let's get into the insane console fanboys rioting over Microsoft acquiring Activision. So let me get this straight. Sony makes Final Fantasy, Street Fighter, Spider-Man and Wolverine PlayStation exclusive. Xbox makes Elder Scrolls, Starfield and possibly some Activision games Xbox exclusive. Xbox equals bad, Sony equals good. Just want to be sure I have my facts straight. Fair, but here you're addressing Sony fan side. What do you think of the actions of Xbox fanboys in the past years, who were saying exclusives are anti-consumer, to now cheering Xbox when it bought Activision, Bethesda, from exclusives being anti-consumer to now pro-consumer? Well, as per usual, there's automatically a huge logical fallacy in another LED's response to Destin. I can easily apply your argument directly to my own. What do you think of the PlayStation fanboys who went from screeching that exclusivity is good for the industry to claiming it's going to ruin the industry, and how it's anti-consumer as soon as Microsoft buys Activision? This is the definition of whataboutism. Hey guys, don't look at our hypocrisy, look at the few Xbox fanboys still in existence. That is not a legitimate argument, that's just dodging accountability. Destin never made the argument that you're suggesting he did via your reply. All he did was point out a blatant double standard that a lot of people have been seeing regarding the Activision buyout. When gaming journalists decry the deal between Xbox and Activision, they're exposing their bias. When you get free games and have a huge editor salary, it's easy to sit in an ivory tower and tell the serfs that $70 per game versus Xbox Game Pass is somehow better for consumers. Jez, you know I love you man, but I have to push back here. What gaming journalist is living in an ivory tower? I agree with the heart of what you're saying about Game Pass, but gaming journalists do not make that much money. Please don't propagate the sellout journalist myth. It's always amazing seeing this guy's tweets because because they never make any sense and he always misses the point. Like I said on Twitter in response to yet another dumbass tweet from Tony, the same guy who unironically claimed graphics were more important for video games than gameplay, he completely twisted what Jez was saying because he got his feelings hurt. What he claimed was that you got a ton of free shit from companies, and that makes it easy to forget how awesome something like Game Pass is in comparison to Sony charging $70 for their titles, which is straight facts. He was not propagating the sellout journalist quote-unquote myth. He was literally just stating a blatant fact. I get it, but it doesn't matter who wanted to buy or sell Activision Blizzard. The move, if the transaction is successful, will still be disastrous for the gaming industry. Now, although Rich isn't a Sony pony, his take on this was so bad, I simply had to include it. PlayStation is not the fucking gaming industry. For some reason, tons of YouTubers as well as journalists have it in their heads that the only platform that actually matters in the industry is PlayStation. That simply isn't true. This is not disastrous for the gaming industry. It may be disastrous for Sony's bank account though. After all, their stock did drop by 20 billion due to this, but apart from that, there's not really a big deal with this happening. Sony does the exact same shit and far more often, plus in a worse way. Unlike with Xbox exclusives, a PS5 or PS4 is the only way to play the majority of their exclusives right now. That is bad for the industry overall, hence why Sony's bringing more and more games to Steam via PC ports. Keeping games off of one platform is in my opinion not an issue, as long as you offer an alternative way to access your games rather than your own platform. Then I am okay with exclusives, because that in and of itself is not monopolization, and you are giving people a multitude of ways to access your video games. PlayStation users will still be able to play these games, whether that be playing it natively on their PC, or through xCloud on their phone, or even xCloud on their laptop/PC. And I'd love to know if Rich would rather prefer the alternative of Activision dying and splitting up. Microsoft can't build the industry into 100% digital, 100% service-based, 100% subscription model until they first bring the industry to its knees. Then they will rebuild and reshape it how they see fit. If you cheer this move, you are anti-consumer and anti-gamer. My god, is the term anti-gamer cringy. If anything is anti-gamer, it's being against services like Game Pass that actively save you money whilst increasing revenue plus profits for indie developers. Also, how exactly is Microsoft trying to turn the video game industry into a solely subscription-based industry? Not sure how you don't know this, but you can buy games through the Game Pass app. The games you can buy which are on Game Pass also come with extra discounts applied in most scenarios, therefore saving you money on games you've purchased if you are subscribed to the service. And another thing I don't get in terms of what PlayStation 5 fanboys often say is that Microsoft is trying to turn the gaming industry digital, as if that isn't what every single video game company has been attempting to do for the past decade. The PC market is essentially fully digital now, and Sony is certainly pushing their digital console more than the disc version by pricing it lower. Oh, that's neat. So Microsoft's just going to brute force its new customers to the ecosystem by leaving really no choice out there. Awesome. You mean kinda like Sony has been doing with their exclusives? Sony does this all the time, locking not just entire third-party games away from other systems by shoving cash in front of publishers' faces due to them not being able to outright acquire them, but also locking specific parts of games away from players who aren't on PlayStation when they are fully multi-platform titles. Marvel Avengers is the perfect example. They removed Spider-Man from every platform but PlayStation. Not that anyone cares in the case of that game because no one plays Marvel Avengers, as Spider-Man got completely cucked by the game design. But either way, if there's one thing that this entire situation has shown, it's how insanely hypocritical people are. It's apparently okay for Sony to buy up studios and make franchises like Spider-Man exclusive, but not for Microsoft to do the exact same thing. And a perfect example of Sony locking content away from certain platforms for a limited time or permanently is ironically Call of Duty. In purchasing Activision and choosing brute force over creativity, Microsoft has officially entered malign influence territory. My only hope is that Sony won't follow suit, but they probably will. The fuck do you mean my only hope is that Sony won't follow suit? They are the ones who heavily push this form of competition throughout the last generation. Now, what I find absolutely hilarious about this tweet is them claiming Microsoft is using brute force to buy up these studios, when in reality Activision went to Microsoft asking to be bought after Facebook turned them down. Microsoft didn't go out of their way to purchase purchased them. Activision came to them. Do you really think Microsoft's gonna go, oh no, we don't want one of the biggest publishers in gaming under our belt, when they've come directly to them? Sony didn't create Spider-Man, Final Fantasy, Wolverine, Street Fighter, and the list goes on. People complained for years that Xbox had no games, but as soon as they do, people still cry about it because organic growth. An incredibly moronic argument because Sony does the exact same shit as Microsoft has been doing in the past year or so. Also, the argument they've been making about how Microsoft isn't being creative is incredibly strange. Xbox has been giving their developers tons of freedoms to do what they want from what we can see. It didn't at all take long for Phil Spencer to come out and talk about how much he wanted to help studios like Toys and Bob go back to working on the games they want to instead of Call of Duty. Something that would have never have happened if Activision didn't sell itself. I also find it absolutely hilarious that a guy who is consistently celebrating Sony buying up studios and consistently celebrating them paying for exclusivity is crying about Xbox doing the exact same thing. If you want to talk about malign influence, then that argument could easily be directed right back at Sony due to them using paid time exclusivity for games in order to try and push Xbox out of the market last generation. One of the game franchises they did this with was, funny enough, Call of Duty. If you're going to be claiming that Microsoft essentially copies Sony's strategy is using malign influence, then how the fuck is that not the same thing when PlayStation does it? Xbox should make good games. PlayStation isn't pressured yet. Most gamers don't care about acquisitions, and sales prove that after their last big one. None of what you just said is even close to true. Of course, PlayStation is pressured by their direct competitor now owning the most sold game franchise on their platform. If Microsoft removes that from them, then they've lost over $260 million of revenue a year, which for Microsoft is pocket change. For Sony, that is a hell of a lot of money, and that is a major hit for them. Now, how anyone can think that people don't care about acquisitions is truly beyond me. Of course, people will care that Microsoft owns one of the biggest gaming companies right now. PlayStation takes in an average $25 billion per year, while Xbox and Blizzard combined ranked in $21.9 billion, which makes them last place, #3 behind PlayStation and Nintendo. This acquisition could be won out of desperation. If anything screams desperation, it's spending $70 billion of your pocket money to buy a company who asked to be bought by you specifically. I'm not gonna lie, the whole Microsoft is a monopoly argument sure seems to have been debunked here by someone who more than likely has made that argument. A company can't own a monopoly if it's in third place. That simply defies all forms of logic. Now, I would have read out a hell of a lot more Sony Pony tweets, however lots of the ones I had saved the links for when I made this video got deleted by the people making them, which means that we have finally come to the end of my video. So all that being said, please do not forget to do all the things YouTubers love to beg you to do, aka check out my Discord server, follow me on Twitter, as well as like, comment and subscribe. So I'll see you all in the next video.